Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. This is a B1 level grammar lesson, or ESL grammar lesson. Today we're going to be reviewing comparative and superlatives for adjectives and adverbs and using those to describe food. So which is better? Which is best? What is your favorite food? What's the best food in the world? And which of these cuisines is better than the other ones? Turkish cuisine, Vietnamese food, Indian cuisine, Mediterranean food, and you can feel free to answer those questions in the comments. So Mexican cuisine is one of the most well-known and it is instantly recognizable. So what are the most important ingredients in Mexican food? And do you know the ingredients in your favorite food? And again, you can feel free to answer those questions in the comments. So Angela talks about her favorite Mexican foods. So we're going to listen and then you'll answer the questions.
In Oaxaca, Mexico, these are some of my favorite breakfast dishes. 1. Molletes. These are definitely the quickest, easiest option. Molletes are like open sandwiches. You just slice bread rolls in half and top them with refried beans and cheese. Then you broil them until the cheese melts. After that, you can add fresh hot sauce or other toppings like ham or avocado.
So she says that molletes are the quickest and easiest option for breakfast. You top the bread rolls with refried beans and cheese. You broil them until the cheese melts. And Angela suggests adding toppings such as ham or avocado. Angela describes another favorite breakfast food, so complete the text with comparative or superlative forms of the adjectives, and then think about which comparative and superlatives forms did you use, and then you can listen, restart the video and listen to see how Angela completed.
2. Huevos rancheros. These are more filling than molletes, and probably the most famous Mexican breakfast option outside of Mexico. The dish consists of fried eggs, just like people eat all over the world. But this version is perhaps a little tastier and spicier. The eggs are served on tortillas and covered with a fresh sauce made of tomatoes, onion, and chili. Huevos rancheros are often served with refried beans, rice, and avocado.
So the comparative forms were more filling, tastier, spicier, and the superlative forms were the most famous. So now look at the adjectives and adverbs, and can you answer the questions? So with a one-syllable adjective like poor, how do you form the comparative? You would add er, be poorer. Two or more syllables ending in y, like easy, you would change the y to an I and add er, so that would be easier. Two or more syllables not ending in y, you would have to say more careful. And then the exceptions, you just have to memorize those. So the comparative form of good is better. So adverbs, one syllable. Late, you would add ly, lately. Two or more syllables, the comparative would be more carefully. And the exception, well, better, would be the comparative form of well. All right, so now comparing different things. Gail compared two different times in his life. So here we have the one syllable plus er, older, longer, smarter. The adjectives ending in y, dropping the y and adding ier, so heavier, easier, lazier. And then two or more syllables, more expensive, more helpful, more interesting. And remember that we use a comparative adjective to compare two or more things. My course was more interesting than my job at the supermarket. And we use the plus a superlative adjective to talk about extremes. It was the most amazing day of my life. So remember that adverbs usually describe an action, and an adverb tells us how the action was done. Here are two common adverbs. These are adverbs of manner. He worked hard, and they walked slowly. And there are different ways to make comparative adverbs. He worked harder than the other students. They walked more slowly than us. So if it's one syllable, you would add er or r, as in faster, later, harder. Two or more syllables, you use more, so more slowly, more carefully, more patiently. And for irregular verbs, again, you would just have to, irregular adverbs, you would need to memorize those. So well, better, badly, worse, far, further, and early, earlier. All right, so now practice the comparatives and complete each sentence with a comparative adjective or adverb. You can pause the video, try these on your own, and then restart when you're ready to check your answers. So let's take the bus. It's faster than walking. I think that Turkish food is more delicious than Italian food. Maria did better on her final exam than she expected. She has traveled to France more often than to Spain or Italy. London, England is more populated than Sydney, Australia. Canada is a larger country than Japan. Elliot performed worse on this month's test than on last month's test. Ivan arrived earlier at the party than I expected. Philip moved houses recently and now walks further to the office than he did before. And you need to work more carefully. You made too many careless errors. Now to form superlatives. If it's a one-syllable adjective, you use the article the plus the adjective and then they add the est ending. So the oldest, the longest, the smartest. If the adjective ends in y, again you use the plus the adjective, drop the y and add iest. So the heaviest, the easiest, the laziest. And then with two or more syllables, you use the most plus the adjective, the most expensive, the most helpful, the most interesting. Some two-syllable adjectives use er and the est to form the comparative and superlative, and you will need to remember these adjectives when you encounter them. If you're unsure, you can use the most to form the superlative. So here are the irregulars. Good. Superlative is the best, bad, the worst, far, the farthest, little, the least, and much, the most. So now we'll look at how we form superlative adverbs. Again, with one syllable, you just add the est. The hardest, the latest, the highest, the lowest. Two or more syllables, you would add the most carefully, the most seriously, the most often, the most recently. And irregulars, you just put the before the irregular superlative. Well would become the best, badly, the worst, far, the farthest, early, the earliest, little, the least, and much, the most. And here are some example sentences. John studies the hardest in his class. Nabi travels the farthest to work. She spoke the most during the meeting. And Sally played the best during the soccer match. Now complete each sentence with a superlative, adjective, or adverb. You can pause the video, try this on your own, and then restart when you're ready to check your answers. So yum, that was the most delicious meal I've ever eaten. What a horrible movie. It was let's see, most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Of my 3 children, James calls me the most often. In Australia, Alice Springs is the highest town from the ocean. You have to travel 750 miles or 1,250 kilometers to reach it. Actually, that should be the farthest, not the highest. There were 126 runners in the race, and Eric was the fastest. Mount Kosciuszko is the highest mountain on mainland Australia. And what an amazing roller coaster. That was the fastest ride I've ever been on. All right, so now we're going to listen to Angela talk about another breakfast food. You'll be listening for the comparative and superlative forms and in what order she says each of these things.
3. Enfrijoladas. These are one of the best ways to eat black beans. Enfrijoladas are made with a black bean mixture, some white cheese, and tortillas. You heat the tortillas, put some cheese on them, and fold them in half. Then you spoon the black bean sauce over the tortillas and sprinkle some more cheese on top. You can also add chicken or chorizo if you want to make them heartier.
All right, so Angela's final suggestion, and you'll listen or talk about chilaquiles, and then we'll answer the questions true or false.
4. Chilaquiles. These are one of the most popular breakfast dishes in Mexico. You add a chili sauce to lightly fried pieces of tortilla and heat the mixture up. Then you can add chicken, cream, cheese, and avocado. And people often serve them with refried beans and eggs. Chilaquiles verdes come with a green sauce, or chilaquiles rojos have a red sauce. Which is better? Well, it depends who you talk to.
Okay, so the comparison of equality and inequality, look at how we use more, less, and as blank as with comparative adjectives and adverbs. To show a greater amount or degree, we use er, more, etc. For example, he can run faster than his classmates. That movie was more interesting than the one we saw last weekend. To show that two things are equal, we use as plus an adjective or adverb plus as again. Johann studies as hard as we do. William talks as loudly as his father. And then the opposite of more is less. We can always use not as plus an adjective or adverb plus as. So today is less sunny than yesterday. Khan isn't as hardworking as his sisters. All right, so now complete each sentence with as plus as or not as plus as and an adjective or adverb. All right, so Taylor and his sister ran as fast as each other in the race. They both finished in 13 minutes and 23 seconds. I like Margaret and I like her children too. The children are as polite as their mother. Australia is not as large as Russia. Russia is much bigger. I don't think that you are as hardworking as. Your sister. You don't score as well as her in exams. You definitely don't drive as carefully as I do. I've never had a speeding ticket, and you've had 3 this month. Now we use the words just, nearly, almost, and even with as, like as. Nearly, almost, and just have similar meanings. I'm just as intelligent as you. She's nearly as tall as her parents, and she's only 12. And Jonathan swims almost as well as you. So just means something like exactly. We we use even to show that something is surprising or unreal. The cake that you baked was even as delicious as the one we ate at the restaurant last week. The coffee here is expensive, but it isn't even as good as the cheaper coffee from the cafe across the street. So now look at how we modify comparative adjectives. He's a lot fitter since he joined the swimming team. My mother's much happier these days. The concert was far louder than I expected. The hotel was even less expensive than I thought it would be. I arrived slightly later than I planned, and you seem a little more relaxed this week. Now, each sentence contains an error, so go ahead and try that and correct it. So here it should be, it was the most delicious meal I'd ever eaten. Maria feels a little better than she did yesterday. So today's lesson wasn't a lot more difficult than usual. I'm much more hardworking than my brother. Let's see, let's check out oops, number 5, I'm not sure of. I live almost as far as you from downtown. I haven't been sleeping quite as well as I normally do. That was the most boring movie that I've ever seen. Alan lives the farthest from the office. Suzanne arrived at the meeting much earlier than them. And New York was a little less expensive than I expected. London is more expensive. right, so you have heard a little about Mexican food. What did you learn? Can you remember the name of the breakfast foods that Angela talked about? And can you remember how to prepare them? All right, so now read the text and we'll answer some questions. Here's some vocabulary. These are examples of tortillas. And the Aztecs were a civilization that flourished in modern-day Mexico. Aztec art and architecture, is famous. Traditionally, corn is the basis of most Mexican food. Tortillas are a kind of thin flatbread made of corn. Mexicans eat them every day like the Chinese eat rice or the Italians eat pasta. Many classic Mexican recipes involve the use of tortillas. Tortillas and chili are often the two key ingredients. People say that the word chilaquiles comes from an ancient language used by the Aztecs and that this dish has been around for centuries. So complete the text with a comparative or superlative form of the adjective. So one reason for its popularity is that it is one of the easiest and the tastiest Mexican dishes to prepare. It's also one of the most versatile. The basic recipe is very simple, just tortillas and a chili sauce. It's even better to use day-old tortillas. It's a great way to use up leftovers, and it's one of the cheapest ways to prepare a hot meal. Traditionally, different ingredients are popular in different regions of Mexico, but you can, add, for example, onions, cream, cheese, chicken, beef, or eggs. You can make it spicier. Or you can also bake the tortillas instead of frying them if you are looking for a healthier version. All right, so now complete the final part of the text with a comparative or superlative. These days, chilaquiles has a reputation as the most effective way to cure a headache. Maria Elena has a food stand in Mexico City where she sells a type of sandwich made with chilaquiles. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are her busiest. Busiest days, and there is often a line of bleary-eyed customers waiting patiently when she arrives at 7 a.m. It's not the healthiest. It's not the healthiest start to the day, but for these Mexicans, it's definitely the best option. It certainly beats a bowl of cereal. All right, so what's the most delicious thing you've ever eaten? So talk about a wonderful meal that you've ate recently and take some notes. Where were you? Who were you with? What was the name of the food? What were the ingredients and how can you prepare the food? What words can you use to describe it? And do you think that you will eat it again? And you can share your ideas in the comments. So again, talk about a delicious food that you ate and use some of comparative and superlative forms. It was spicier than I expected. It was the most scrumptious thing I've ever eaten. It was quite a lot cheaper. It was even better than my grandma's cooking, and it was harder to prepare than I expected. That brings us to the end of today's video. Please like, subscribe, share, leave comments, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.